Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into, an incredibly dramatic moment from the Hebrew Bible, specifically 2 Samuel chapter 17.
It's quite the scene. You've got King David, he's on the run, literally fleeing Jerusalem.
Right, because his own son, Absalom, has staged this surprisingly successful rebellion and actually seized the capital.
Exactly. So Absalom's in power in Jerusalem now, but, it's precarious. David's still out there,
Right.
alive.
So Absalom faces this absolutely pivotal decision. What's the next move? How does he deal with his father and, cement his own power?
And this chapter, it basically puts us right in the room with him. He's seeking counsel from his top advisors. It leads to this fascinating strategic showdown. The stakes, unbelievably high.
Absolutely. We're talking the fate of a kingdom, the life of a king, the outcome of this whole rebellion. It's all hanging in the balance. All comes down to a choice between two starkly different plans.
Let's unpack it. It's a critical moment, full of surprising twists.
Okay, so it kicks off with Absalom gathering his advisors, and the first one up is Ahithophel.
Right. Ahithophel. Now, the text doesn't give us his whole CV here, but the fact that he's asked first and that his plan initially sounds so good to everyone,
Yeah.
that tells you everything.
Tells you his reputation. He's the wise strategist.
Precisely. So Absalom asks him, what should we do?
And Ahithophel's plan is...
It's swift, it's decisive, and pretty lethal. His advice is basically, let me pick 12,000 men. We set out tonight after David.
Tonight. Wow, no messing around. Why the extreme urgency?
He sees a window. David and his people just fled. They're probably exhausted, disorganized, vulnerable. Ahithophel says, I'll attack him while he's weary and weak.
Hit them hard and fast.
Exactly. Hit them with a shock force. Cause panic.
Scatter David's followers.
But the main target wasn't the followers, right? It was very specific.
Very specific. This is the almost clinical part of it. Ahithophel says, I would strike down only the king.
Only David.
Just David, he explains, and bring all the people back to you. The death of the man you seek will mean the return of all. All the people will be unharmed. Wow, so it's not about defeating an army. It's a decapitation strike. Eliminate the leader, and the movement collapses.
And the pitch is, David's gone. His supporters have no one left to follow. They'll just submit to Absalom. It preserves the kingdom, avoids more bloodshed.
Brutal, yes, but from a purely strategic angle, aimed at consolidating power fast. It sounds incredibly effective. You can see why they liked it.
Oh, absolutely. High risk, maybe, but high reward. Focused on that single objective. And the text confirms the initial reaction. This plan seemed good to Absalom and to all the elders of Israel.
Right, not just Absalom. The whole council thought, yeah, that's the move.
Makes sense. Let's do it.
So you'd think, okay, case closed then. Top advisor gives a plan, everyone's on board. But Absalom pauses. He wants a second opinion.
He does. Which is interesting in itself, right? If the plan seems so good.
Maybe some doubt. We're just covering bases?
Perhaps. He says, summon also Hushai the Archite, so we can hear what he has to say.
Hushai. Now, he's a key figure too, but playing a different game, isn't he?
He is. Hushai is actually David's friend and advisor who stayed behind deliberately. He's acting as a double agent, feeding Absalom information, or, in this case, advice designed to help David.
So Absalom brings Hushai in, lays out Ahithophel's plan, the Swiss strike, target the king, and asks for his take.
And Hushai doesn't just offer a slight modification, he goes completely against the grain.
Right. He immediately says...
He says, the advice Ahithophel has given is not good this time. Just flat out contradicts the consensus.
Bold move. And how does he justify that? What's his argument against Ahithophel's seemingly solid plan?
Hushai flips the script.
Yeah.
He focuses on David's strength, not his weakness. He reminds Absalom, you know your father and his men, he says. They are fighters.
Experienced warriors.
And not just experienced, but fierce. He uses this image as fierce as a wild bear robbed of her cubs. He's playing on the reputation. These guys are dangerous, especially when cornered.
So David isn't just a weary target. He's a formidable opponent.
Exactly. And Hushai highlights David's cunning, his tactical mind. Besides, he argues, your father is an experienced fighter. He will not spend the night with the troops.
He won't be caught exposed.
Right. He's too smart for that. Hushai suggests, even now he is hidden in a cave or some other place. He's probably anticipating an attack, laying low, maybe setting an ambush.
A cave. Yeah, that paints a picture of David potentially turning the tables.
And that's the risk Hushai emphasizes. What if Absalom's elite force walks into a trap? If David strikes first from a hidden position?
Even a small defeat could be disastrous.
It could cause a slaughter among the troops who follow Absalom, and the psychological impact. Devastating.
Yeah, the morale hit would be huge.
Hushai really leans into this. He reminds Absalom of David's legendary status. If word gets out that David routed even a part of Absalom's force, then even the bravest soldier, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt with fear.
Because everyone knows David.
For all Israel knows that your father is a fighter, and that those with him are brave. So a quick strike isn't just risky tactically. It risks demoralizing the entire rebellion.
Okay, so Hushai effectively dismantles Ahithophel's plan by highlighting David's strength, his cunning, his reputation. Then what? He must offer an alternative.
He does. And it's the complete opposite strategy. Forget speed, forget precision. Hushai goes for delay and overwhelming force.
How overwhelming.
He says, let all Israel, from Dan to Beersheba,
The entire country.
as numerous as the sand on the seashore, be gathered to you. A massive national army. Mobilize everyone.
And Absalom himself should lead this army.
Yes, that's key. Hushai says Absalom must lead personally. It's about showing Absalom as the true leader of a united Israel, commanding this unstoppable force. Very different from Ahithophel's targeted strike by a select group.
And the goal of this massive army, not just capturing David, I assume.
Oh no, the goal is total annihilation. Hushai says they will fall on him as dew settles on the ground.
Covering.
Completely.
Yeah.
Then neither he nor any of his men will be left alive. Wipe them out. Leave no trace.
Wow.
He even adds this rather graphic contingency. If David holes up in a city, they should bring ropes and literally drag it down to the valley until not even a piece of it can be found.
Okay, that's scorched earth. No room for David or his legacy to survive.
It's a vision of absolute overwhelming victory led by Absalom himself.
So you have these two starkly contrasting plans. Plan A, Ahithophel's swift surgical strike tonight, target the king, win the people back quickly. Plan B, Hushai's slow burn, massive mobilization, Absalom leads, total annihilation of David and all his followers.
Two completely different paths presented to Absalom. And then comes the decision.
Despite Ahithophel's plan initially seeming good to everyone,
Yeah.
what happens?
The text says, Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than that of Ahithophel.
They choose Hushai's plan, the slower, grander, more brutal option.
They do. And this is the absolute turning point. The narrative immediately gives us this crucial piece of behind-the-scenes insight.
Right, the narrator adds a comment here.
It says, for the Lord had determined to frustrate the good advice of Ahithophel in order to bring disaster on Absalom.
That is fascinating. The text itself calls Ahithophel's advice good, implying it was strategically sound. It probably would have worked.
Yes, but it says it was frustrated, thwarted, divinely.
So from Absalom's perspective, maybe Hushai's plans sounded grander. Maybe it played to his ego leading this huge army. Or maybe Hushai's warnings about David really scared them.
Could be any of those human factors.
Yeah.
But the biblical narrator steps in to say the ultimate reason they made this, well, ultimately fatal choice was part of a larger divine plan aimed at Absalom's downfall.
It adds such a layer. Human decision-making, strategy, fear, ambition, all intertwined with this sense of a predetermined outcome. Makes you think, doesn't it?
Definitely. How often are big decisions swayed by things other than pure logic? But anyway, Hushai knows this decision buys David time, but only if David moves now.
Right. So what does Hushai do immediately after convincing Absalom?
He doesn't hang around congratulating himself. He knows the clock is ticking. He goes straight to Zadok and Abiathar.
The priests loyal to David still in Jerusalem.
Exactly. He tells them everything. Both counsels, Ahithophel's rejected plan, his own accepted one, and he gives them an urgent warning for David.
Get the message out, fast.
Yes. He says, send word immediately. Tell David, do not spend the night at the fords in the desert.
The river crossings.
Right. Cross over without fail, or the king and all the people with him will be swallowed up. He knows that eventually Absalom's huge army will come, and the Jordan fords are the logical place to trap David.
Getting that message out sounds like a spy thriller in itself.
It really was. The priests couldn't just walk out, so they had a system. Their sons, Jonathan and Achimaaz, were waiting outside the city walls at a spring called Enrogel, discreet spot.
Okay, the rendezvous point.
The plan was, a servant girl takes the message from the priests inside the city, slips out to Enrogel, gives it to Jonathan and Achimaaz, and they run it to David.
Simple enough, but things go wrong, right? This is where we see some real heroism.
They almost get caught. A young man spots Jonathan and Ahimaaz hanging around on Rogel, figures something's up, and runs to tell Absalom.
Oh no! So the messengers have to bolt.
Immediately.
Ugh.
They flee east towards the Jordan to reach a village called Bahurim. They find a sympathizer, a house, And the only hiding place is a well in the courtyard.
They hide down a well, and someone helps them.
Yes, the woman of the house. It's an amazing moment. Absalom's men show up, hot on their trail.
What does she do?
Quick thinking. She grabs a covering, throws it over the well opening, then she scatters grain, maybe cracked wheat or something all over the covering.
To make it look like a drying area.
Exactly. Totally normal. Brilliant camouflage under immense pressure.
So when the soldiers arrive asking about the messengers...
She just plays it cool. They ask, where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? She calmly says, oh, they crossed over the brook. Like, they're long gone, already moved on past here.
And the soldiers buy it.
They search around a bit, don't find them, assume she's telling the truth, and head back to Jerusalem empty-handed.
Incredible nerve. Her courage basically saved them.
It did. As soon as the coast was clear, Jonathan and Ahimaaz climb out of the well.
And they get the message to David.
They make it. They reach David, deliver Hushai's urgent warning. Cross the Jordan now. Interestingly, the text mentions they specifically told David about Ahithophel's plan too.
Even that was rejected. Why?
Probably to underscore the immediate danger he had been in and the absolute necessity of getting across that river before Absalom could mobilize based on Hushai's accepted plan. No time to waste.
And David's reaction, he understands the urgency.
Instantly. The text says, so David and all people with him set out and crossed the Jordan. They traveled all night.
Nonstop.
Nonstop. By daybreak, no one was left who had not crossed the Jordan. They were safe across the river. Thanks to Hushai's ploy, the messengers run, and that quick-witted woman.
Meanwhile, back near Jerusalem, Ahithophel gets the news. His good counsel was rejected. Hushai's plan was chosen. How does he take it?
This is just devastating. When Ahithophel realizes his advice was ignored, he doesn't just get angry or disappointed. He understands the implications immediately.
He sees the inevitable outcome.
He knows Absalom has chosen the path to ruin, and by sidelining him, Absalom has likely sealed Ahithophel's fate too. If the rebellion fails, which Ahithophel now sees as certain, he's implicated.
He saw the writing on the wall, as they say.
Completely. So he calmly returns to his hometown. The text adds this really poignant detail. He put his house in order, got his affairs settled, and then he hanged himself. He was buried in his father's tomb. It's incredibly tragic, but it speaks volumes about his conviction. He was so certain his strategy was right and that ignoring it meant disaster that he couldn't face the fallout.
Wow. A stark reminder of the personal cost of political maneuvering and rejected counsel.
His death is a direct, dramatic consequence of that single decision Absalom made.
While Ahithophel meets his tragic end, Absalom is moving forward with Hushai's plan, the one he chose.
Yes. Absalom leads his forces across the Jordan. And there's another significant move here. Absalom replaces Joab as commander of the army.
Joab, David's longtime, very capable, but sometimes ruthless general.
The very same. Absalom appoints Amasa instead. The text gives us Amasa's lineage, connecting him as a relative, albeit slightly more distantly than Joab.
So putting his own man in charge, asserting authority.
Exactly. It's a political move as much as a military one, consolidating his control over the army, even if it meant replacing someone as experienced as Joab.
Setting the stage for the big confrontation that's now inevitable.
Right. Absalom and his army make camp in Gilead, the region east of the Jordan. Meanwhile, David, having successfully crossed the river, reaches a town called Mahanaim. It's a historically significant place in Gilead, relatively secure.
And here, finally, David and his exhausted followers find some relief, some support.
They do. They arrive, as the text says, hungry and tired and thirsty in the desert. It must have been a grueling escape. But they're met by local leaders who show remarkable loyalty.
Who were they?
3 men are named, Shobi, Merakir, and Barzillai. They come out to David at Mahanaim, not with weapons, but with provisions.
Much-needed supplies, I imagine.
Incredible amount, actually. The list is quite detailed. They bring practical things like bedding and bowls and articles of pottery, things you'd need to set up a basic camp.
And food.
Lots of food. Staples like wheat and barley, flour and roasted grain, beans and lentils, and also things for strength and perhaps comfort, honey and curds, sheep and cheese from cow's milk.
It sounds like they brought everything needed to sustain an army, or at least a large group of refugees.
They really did. They provided for their physical needs. And the text tells us exactly why. For they said, the people have become hungry and tired and thirsty in the desert. Simple compassion and loyalty.
It's such a contrast to the plotting and betrayal back in Jerusalem. Just straightforward kindness and support for the king in his time of need.
It really highlights the different kinds of responses David encounters. Political scheming on one side, practical faithfulness on the other.
So looking back at this whole chapter, 2 Samuel 17, it's so much more than just troop movements and advice. Why does this deep dive still matter? What are the takeaways?
Well, it's just packed with insights, isn't it? Strategy, leadership, human nature under extreme pressure. You see these competing approaches, the quick strike versus the overwhelming force, debated with life or death results.
And it shows us so much about the people involved. Ahithophel's despairing certainty, Hushai's cunning loyalty, the bravery of the messengers, the woman at the well.
And the simple faithfulness of Shobi, Makir, and Barzillai. It reveals character in crisis.
It also really underscores how critical decisions get made. It's often not just pure logic, is it? Ego, fear, perception, maybe even, as the text suggests, forces beyond our understanding can play a role.
Absolutely. The choice for Hushai's better plan, which seemed appealing perhaps for its grandeur, led directly towards disaster, while Ahithophel's good, strategically sound plan was sidelined. It makes you think about how we evaluate advice.
And the consequences are so real. Ahithophel's suicide is a stark reminder of the weight of these decisions.
It's a microcosm of conflict, betrayal, loyalty, strategy, desperation, unexpected kindness, and the unpredictable nature of events.
Cute. So we've seen these two clashing strategies, a decision that sealed fates, a desperate escape enabled by hidden courage, and the tragic end for an advisor ignored.
All set against this backdrop of rebellion reaching its climax, shaped by human choices and, crucially, what the text presents as a guiding divine hand.
It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about: leadership, advice, loyalty, fate. Here's maybe a final thought for you to chew on. How often, even today, do you see really crucial decisions made in politics, business, maybe even our own lives, where the choice seems driven less by the cold, hard facts or the most rational strategy, and more by things like representation or ego or maybe just gut feeling? And what are the real-world consequences when that happens, when the good advice gets ignored for the one that just sounds better in the moment?